Thank you very much for joining us today for our session on building psychological safety in the workplace. Very excited to be here today. My name is Oliver Brett. I am one of the VPs here at Workplace Options, and I am joined by Barbara Vetter, who is an esteemed colleague of ours in the industry. She has been working in this field around helping organizations to create inclusive and resilient workplaces for quite some time now. And in addition to being a participant in the industry, she's also a recognized researcher as well, publishing a number of materials around how organizations can measure the effectiveness and outcomes of their corporate mental health programs as well, but spending a lot of her time now working on the subject of psychological safety with many of her clients as well. So thank you, Barbara, for joining us today. I'm very excited to be presenting with you. Just before we jump in to the content of the session, just highlighting, if you can please make sure that you keep yourselves on mute just during the content. Of course, if at any point you've got a question, please ask them throughout the process, put them in the chat function or raise your hand. More than happy to be supporting your questions along the way to be ensuring that you're getting the most out of this session. We do have some interactive polls as well. It would be fantastic to see yourselves contribute to those along the way so that we're able to really get your feedback, get your insight, see where you're at on the psychological safety journey within your team and your workplace. I believe you might have access to all the polls at once, but please do them one at a time so that you can stay with us focused on the content. We will get to the polls throughout, and I'll be reminding you that when the polls will be present and when they'll be active as well. But without any further delay, let's get ourselves into today's session. So having a look at what Barbara and I will be discussing today is we're going to be discussing, as we mentioned, all things around psychological safety. And we're going to start this process by really defining what psychological safety is. There's a number of different definitions, but we're going to be really honing in on what the core of psychological safety is and what it means for your people and your workplace. We'll also, probably a little bit later on, but under the same thing, be dispelling some myths around psychological safety and also be really defining some clarity for you between psychological safety and another popular topic, which is psychosocial risk. We're going to talk a lot around the intersection between psychological safety and employee engagement. Although separate, they are linked, and you certainly need psychological safety in order to build a strong sense of employee engagement, which is a really important component of being able to attract and maximize the outcome of top talent for your organization. And of course, once you have that talent, keep that talent with you as well. We're going to then look at how you can move the dial on taking action to move psychological safety and thus employee engagement into a higher priority for your organization. So there is obviously a growing understanding amongst our industry individuals and amongst HR and amongst those of us that work day in, day out on these factors about the importance of psychological safety, but increasing it on the priority list of your organization can be a harder challenge. So we'll talk through some examples, we'll talk through some key data points, we'll talk on some ways that you're able to elevate that concept of priority within your organization to help your leaders better understand psychological safety and support a positive and sustainable focus on it as well. And then, of course, we always want to leave our participants with an element of practical tools and resources that both you can utilize, your leaders can utilize, and anyone else can utilize in your organization to better support and build psychological safety. So when we look at how we define psychological safety and what it is, really getting in at the ground level, the 101 of psychological safety, effectively it's around the shared belief within your workplace or within your team, whatever collective cohort you are looking at, that it is safe for one to undertake the task that helps them thrive in that position, whether that be able to feel safe in bringing who they truly are to the workplace. They're safe to contribute, and there's a strong connection between engagement and seeing your contributions matter. Safe to challenge, and also safety to learn as well. Is it a safe space for me to be able to take those risks required to develop new skills and develop the competencies along the way through my career and through my position in this team and workplace? It is around effectively how your people feel about being able to take the interpersonal risks, as I mentioned, that help them thrive in that workplace, and contributing to a team, contributing to challenging the status quo in a constructive manner, and also being able to take the risk to learn. They're all concepts of risk that are really important, that come under the concept of psychological safety as well. So when you have a high level of psychological safety, that should be looking like people being able to ask for support, ask for help, being able to take educated risks, people feeling like they're able to and executing a level of challenge, being able to voice when they don't necessarily agree with a particular idea or a particular strategy in a constructive way that helps the team then explore it further. Sometimes psychological safety is inexplicably connected to the concept of mental health and well-being. A psychologically safe environment will generally help support a greater level of mental health and well-being, but it is not directly the mental health and well-being of your team or your workplace. They are two separate concepts. This is really around people's belief around how safe the environment is for them to be themselves, for them to contribute, for them to learn and challenge, not so much whether the environment is conducive or to good mental health or a danger to people's mental health, or an overall concept of what the level of mood stability or anxiousness or stress is within your workplace. That is a separate concept. So just as we wrap up the definition, just again defining and really centering that what psychological safety is that shared belief held by members of your team or your workplace that the environment is one that is safe for them to take the interpersonal risks necessary to thrive and contribute to your team and workplace. So we're going to launch a poll now, and really around trying to understand where you see and feel your organization's current progress on is in regards to fostering a culture of psychological safety in your teams and in your workplace. Do you feel like you're starting out? Is it still exploring and understanding the concept with few or no initiatives? Are you developing some steps to help build training and awareness for how employees and leaders contribute, but it's somewhat inconsistent in the effort or the outcomes? Are you advancing? Do you have a strong base and you're starting to go to the next level? Or are you thriving? Are you really integrating psychological safety into the work culture and practices of your organization? So please take a moment now to contribute. Just give another moment for people to contribute. I can still see the numbers adjusting. So we've had a fair few responses there as well. And what we can see here is that 38% of you recognize that your organization or your team is at the starting point of psychological safety. You are just starting to begin to address psychological safety. 46, nearly half of you recognize that you are in the state of developing. That is, you've got some steps taken, but it is an inconsistent progress, or you're still evolving in the position of psychological safety within your organization. 16% in advancing, and then 3% in thriving. So effectively, we've got nearly 80%, exactly 80% that are sitting in the starting and developing, which is great. It means that your organization is starting to look more at psychological safety and educate itself. And then there's a smaller percentage, potentially, 19 to 20% of you that really feel like you're wanting to take your psychological safety journey within your organization to that next level. So that's really interesting. We'll make sure that we are pairing this presentation to that level on the journey as well. Brilliant. So I provided a definition of what psychological safety is as a whole. Is that real concept or shared belief that it's a place for that people feel like they're able to undertake those interpersonal risks that can help them contribute and feel like they're a part of this environment and able to thrive in that environment as well. So underneath that, what we're really building or what your psychological safety is built on is these four concepts of safety. The first one is feeling included. Do your people feel like they are safe to bring their true and authentic selves to work? And the concept of inclusivity does sit within this component as well. So do they, based on who they are, their beliefs, where they're from, their religion, their sexuality, their all the sort of demographic factors, do they feel like they are able to be open and be themselves? Do they feel that they're accepted by the organization, by their colleagues as well? So you can see the demonstration of this safety about how you see your people interacting with each other. Are certain people excluded? Is anyone excluded based on who they are or what they've done, etc. Number two is the safety to learn. And this can be a particularly hard component of psychological safety to develop within industries that might be high-paced or high stakes. But it's still essential that you're able to provide an environment that enables your people to feel like they can take the risks required to learn. To learn is to improve, to learn is to innovate, to learn is to challenge yourself and to take those next steps in your contribution. So it is essential that you're able, if you want to be retaining staff and engaging them in your organization, that you are creating an environment that is able to respond constructively to errors, is able to respond constructively to people's necessity to learn, and is creating safe spaces in where people can learn. If it is really mission critical, everything that your people do, then how are you creating offline opportunities for your people to learn and to improve? So that there's a couple of positive outcomes. One, as I mentioned, so they can see themselves developing and they see the organization wanting to provide benefit to them, not just them provide benefit to the organization as well, but also to be lowering components of stress, being able to lower components of burnout through being able to ensure that people feel competent and confident in the roles that they're doing and wanting, therefore, to come to work and participate. Third is the feeling of safety to contribute. And this can be hard, particularly for leaders, in whereby your organization or your team is creating a setting for others to be their best. How do people, how do leaders, how do managers view the contributions and efforts and impact of others? Do they see them as threats or do they see them as opportunities as well? Are people threatened by each other or are people driven by each other? And finally, the safety to challenge the status quo. And this is really about the organization's ability to think about the way that they're doing and celebrate and encourage people not incorporating groupthink, but to challenge why we do things and how we do things to ensure that we are innovating and that we are still staying at the cutting edge and the top edge of our industry in the way that we do it. Without the safety to challenge the status quo, you can really foster a culture of complacency amongst the organization, and you can really lose some top talent, feeling as though they're not able to really shape the organization constructively and able to really see it prosper and thrive. So fundamentally, what we're taking away at this point is that the concept of psychological safety is built on these four pillars. So looking at these four pillars and going to our next poll, what would you say is the biggest issue for your organization? And I'll just note, you'll just need to scroll down slightly to actually the bottom poll. Sorry, we've got a little bit out of order with our polls there, to be able to note which one is the major one for yourself. So if you scroll down on the slide on the poll tab, you'll see the safety for inclusion, safety to learn, safety to contribute, and safety to challenge, and you'll be able to contribute there. Now I can see that we have had a substantial contribution here. We see 8% of you seeing the safety inclusion as being the major concern. So by far, well, not by far, but the least hardest component of psychological safety that you're finding is around inclusion. 23% saying that safety to learn is a struggle for your organization. 13% the safety to contribute, whilst 54 are noting 54%, so over half of you are highlighting the safety to challenge is the biggest challenge, is the biggest issue for your company when it comes to psychological safety. And that is really interesting. So as we move through this, presentation, if any of you would like to discuss that, whether it's the ability to create systems and processes that enable people to positively challenge, and it's more around seeing people negatively challenge that is your issue, or whether you're seeing that it's part of the culture where people challenging is not widely accepted, so people aren't even able safe to bring up anything, is your major concern. And even as I talk, that percentage of you seeing safety to challenges continue to increase to up to nearly 60% of the contributions. So by far and away the hardest one, biggest issue present in our group, which is not surprising, I must say. Between contribute and challenge is generally where we see most of the issues or challenges for organizations, and that ability for particularly leaders to be able to see challenge as a constructive part of their team's behavior and to celebrate it can be a really hard component for leaders to do, because it can be felt like a challenge towards competency, towards power, etc., and that is not necessarily always well received. All right, so the last component for me before I've got two more components to go through, but looking at what a psychological safe environment looks like compared to an unsafe environment, some of the practical things that you might witness or understand, and I'm sure some of you will be able to see these in each of these columns in your organization, is these different types of behaviors and approaches within your organization. So are you seeing your people scared of making mistakes versus are you seeing them comfortable with owning mistakes? So when inevitable mistakes or errors do happen, do you find that your team is owning them, or are they quick to try and shift blame? Are they quick to try and identify someone else who can be at blame or at risk of that? Or taking that, rather than trying to solve the issue for the client for the whatever project that they're working on. Are they solution focused or blame focused? And do you feel like the organization environment is one that is very trusting? Do you feel people are open? Do you feel people can be vulnerable with each other, put their hand up when they're unsure? Or is there a real sense of trying to save face or not show any sort of vulnerability amongst the team? Obviously, that last example I gave you, when you have the concept that people need to feel like they can't show a vulnerability, that they need to show an impenetrable force of competency, you can start to see performance drop off, because people are in situations that they're not meant to be in, and when they're overwhelmed with then unwilling to ask for help because of fear out of what that ask for help might result from their clients to their colleagues. Is that going to mean that they feel like they have won over me? Is it going to feel like that they'll be untrusted moving forward? Will it be brought up in later dates that they were not competent in this situation, or that they were unable to perform? How is that really dealt with by their colleagues as well? And of course, really, how is knowledge held and experience held amongst your employees as well? Do you see them sharing their experiences? Do you see them being willing to impart knowledge with colleagues, or do they view information as power? Do they want to keep that to themselves so that they are the only one that can be seen competent, and they are therefore the only one that can contribute positively to the outcomes of the team as well? So when you are fostering a high sense of psychological safety at work, you'll recognize some pretty key outcomes. You're going to recognize that potential issues arise early on in their existence, and this can help avoid catastrophic situations and avoid errors from happening as well. When you take away that sense of vilifying mistakes, when you create an environment that is really solution rather than blame focused, people are going to feel comfortable when they notice potential issues to bring them up early as well. And they will do so without fear of contributing as well. So when they feel like they can own their component of that, when they have a responsibility and a safety to bring up potential issues, that not only helps your organization, but helps engage them feeling like they can own their portion of the organization as well and the outcomes. It helps to foster innovation. Again, it's really hard for your organization to innovate if you don't have a safe space for your people to challenge the status quo. Improves productivity by helping everyone see where they can contribute and feeling empowered to take those opportunities as well. And of course, it helps to create a more respectful workplace and environment. The last one is really, and the last two, based off the data that you provided, is really probably not where, oh no, sorry, the last one, respectful environment, is probably not where a lot of you see your issues and challenges at the moment, given that not a huge percentage of you saw that respect being the major challenge. More probably the outcomes that are being withheld from your organization, given the issues that you as a cohort of participants highlighted, would be the component around innovation and also productivity as well. So there potentially could be some improvement areas for your organizations as you discuss bringing psychological safety higher into the organization's priority, some ways that you can craft your messaging around our ability to innovate and our ability to improve productivity. And on that note, I've spoken a lot. It's time for Barbara.
So thank you so much, Oliver. A great focus on psychological safety. I'll cover off a very high-level definition of employee engagement. Employee engagement is really the enthusiasm about your job, your dedication to the organization, and your wanting the organization to succeed. So you can hear in these two definitions how psychological safety and employee engagement definitely tie into overall organizational success. So moving along, I think it's really important to look at some key research. You can just flip the slides for me. That'd be great, Oliver. The research that we're going to pull on is starting in 2015. These are well-known research studies. The Aristotle Project by Google really made a strong connection between the relationship between psychological safety and employees feeling engaged. McKinsey also brought forward that if employees are engaged or feeling psychologically safe, the organizational engagement has the potential to improve by 50%. And then again, the Gallup did a recent research poll that said, if your team is feeling engaged, then your profits will go up 21%. So there is a great reason from a bottom line revenue point of view to invest in engagement and psychological safety. So we'll move we'll move to the next point. So the flip side of not making this engagement or not having a culture that is psychologically safe and therefore engaged is the financial drain. And the big number on the left side is that $8.8 trillion, an enormous amount of revenue and cost for a lack of engagement. And, the variables, the things that we recognize when your employees are not engaged and when your workforce and the organization is struggling, is that people lose their passion, their commitment to the job, the quality of the work goes down, absenteeism increases, mistakes are made, and turnover is high. So these are all variables that are actually, if you go through your data, are easy to find. Turnover, mistakes, absenteeism, all measurable. The one that I want to underscore is the toxic behavior. Toxic behavior is a big umbrella for a lot of, the flip side of psychological safety is that toxic behavior. And we often put bullying and harassment as the outcomes of toxic behavior. And often when you're looking at organizations, and every day we read the media, I read this morning a K-pop employees coming forward saying that she is she's been bullied in the workplace, and you're seeing more and more of these stories in the media. Toxic behavior, often when I do workshops, I ask people, who has witnessed toxic behavior? And typically 100% of the audience will put up their hands. So certainly a big organizational issue. When I ask who has directly been impacted by toxic behavior, again, the number is very high. You will see over 80% putting up their hands and saying, I have been directly impacted. So the link between disengagement and business profitability is very much tied. We'll continue on. And what you see is, Oliver did a good job of talking about psychological safety. I'm including now the concepts of engagement. You see people flourishing. You see creativity coming to the forefront, efficiencies, high productivity. And you see on the right side, that red column, all the things I just talked about. What is key in this message that I want to leave you with is that these aren't stagnant. They can change in a minute. You can have a high functioning, engaged, and psychologically safe workplace, and then something changes that can immediately impact your workplace culture. And so to have a commitment to continually being aware and monitoring and holding your policies and procedures at the highest level accountable to supporting these practices is going to sustain the positivity, and it's going to help you recognize when you're off track. I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to eliminate anything that is identifiable. I'm going to talk for just a second about a sales team that I worked with. Sales team that when they looked back in their history was a very high performing team, and it was a critical team for the organization. Their profits, their sales were outstretching all the targets set. They were probably running at their best performance at 150% of hitting target. Their leader left, needed to move on, went for another career opportunity, and the organization had to select a new leader. Everybody in the team felt the natural leader was a colleague of theirs. She was taking a lot of leadership roles within the team, but management made a different decision. They brought someone from a different department in. The person they brought in was a colleague that was well known to the president, and there was a belief that there was nepotism. That's a toxic behavior, of course. And right away, the team had a reaction. The leader wasn't able to connect. The team culture shifted almost overnight dramatically. And the performance of that team also shifted. They lost 50% of the revenue they were accountable for. Their targets shifted. So you can see, organizational change, leadership change, can have immediately a dramatic effect on your culture. We're going to move along. Just to highlight this point, I'll leave you with, psychological safety embeds in its essence employee engagement. You want at the highest level trust and open communication. You want participation and collaboration. You want people to take risk, and I would definitely connect risk taking to the ability to challenge. That 54% of you who said I can't challenge, or challenging is a problem within our organization. If you can shift your culture to that psychologically safe workplace, you will see people feeling more comfortable bringing forward issues, and the resiliency in your team increases.
And Barbara, you made a really good point there that reminded me, I'd forgotten one thing as well when describing psychological safety, that it is a concept that it's a scale, right? And all four of those subcomponents of psychological safety are a scale in and of themselves. You either don't, it's not a case that you do or don't have psychological safety, or you do or don't have a culture of being able to safe to learn. There's degrees of that, and you might witness that there's safety to learn in certain situations versus other situations. There might be a concept of safety, but it's not a really strong one. So as organizations and as our participants here reflect on their teams and reflect on their own organizations, it's important to think about not just whether you do or do not have safety, whether you do or do not have a safety to learn or contribute, but how much of that safety, where might you see it at its strongest and where might you see it as its weakest as well? And that'll help you to paint a more in-depth picture about where you're sitting with psychological safety as well. And we've got some questions that you can walk away with at the end to consider and that you can use to ask your teams as well to get an overall reading on psychological safety as well. But we'll introduce that a little bit later. But bringing in and closing the loop kind of around the link between employee engagement and psychological safety. What you see on your screen now is the workplace options pyramid around employee engagement and how you can maximize the outcome and commitment and inputs and outputs of your team. And it's really about going through and ensuring that your organization and its culture is built in a way that is supporting employee engagement through enabling the employees to see the benefits and connection from the organization, not just how they are contributing to the organization as well. So at the base level and the foundation level, and you'll see psychological safety there as well, is what are the leadership strategies that your organization has that help to align and include your people along the way? Do you have inclusive leadership strategies as well that are incorporating a safe environment for everyone? Are you monitoring and practicing the development of your psychological safety? Are you practicing DEIA? Are you building relationships with your people? Are you ensuring that your communication strategies are effective and holistic? And are you providing and prioritizing professional development for your leaders and also for your people as well? And although psychological safety is something that is of importance and all employees contribute to, it is placed under the leadership strategies by us here at WPO because it is your leaders that set the tone. It is your leaders that are going to have the biggest impact and influence over the concept of psychological safety as well, particularly when it comes to those factors of psychological safety around the celebration of contribution and the ability for people to challenge and learn as well. Your people might be able to support each other, but it's really the tone and the behaviors that your leaders are demonstrating and housing themselves just going to have the biggest influence on the culture of your organization as well. So as you look, for those of you that are in the earlier stages of psychological safety, I would be encouraging you that your biggest impact wins, your biggest impact areas probably is actually going to be what you can do to educate and empower your leaders and managers in how to be psychologically safe leaders and how they can incorporate psychological safety techniques and practices to enhance the performance of their teams as well. Now, I did just notice as well that we had have a question around the issues or the components of psychological safety. Are they progressive levels, e.g., does safety to challenge reflect low levels of safety as opposed to safety for inclusion? My response to that is really that they're not really building blocks on each other. They are four separate concepts. But I would dare say, and I would see that focusing primarily on ensuring you've got an inclusive environment is going to be tremendously helpful in then trying to create an environment that enables safety to challenge, safety to learn, safety to contribute. If your environment is not fundamentally one in where people feel that they can be safe to be themselves, then you're going to have an uphill battle to convincing them, or more appropriately, kind of like setting an environment that helps them feel like it's safe to contribute, and by that I mean your employees, safe to contribute, safe to challenge, and safe to learn. So if you are looking at how you might go through psychological safety in a progressive fashion, I would dare say starting with reflecting on your inclusive psychological safety factors and what it is like for your employees to enter the workspace and work environment is your first base. I would go there first, and then from there be looking to build into learning, into challenge, and into contribution as well. So, debunking some of the psychological safety misconceptions. We touched on this very briefly at the beginning in that Psychological safety is not the same as mental health. Therefore, it is also not going to eliminate all the psychosocial risks or all the risks that your organization faces as well. So it won't eliminate the risk of interpersonal breakdowns. It won't eliminate all the risks in regards to how people are interacting with each other or how people are contributing, but it will set a tone and a culture about how the organization overall handles these situations, about what the expectation is, the way that we interact and work together. So it will help to overcome the majority of the risks, but not all risks as well. It will support the organization in handling some psychosocial risk, in particular being able to help people feel safe in able to highlight and identify psychosocial risks to leaders, to management as well. And that's how a psychologically safe workplace can help you address psychosocial hazards or risks. But it's not going to eliminate them. It's not going building psychological safety to overcome the fact that there is role conflict or trying to overcome workplace or work role demands on your people. Psychological safety won't override that for you. You can't shortcut and use psychological safety as a way of overworking everyone and everyone being okay with that. But what it will do is help your employees feel like they can contribute in helping letting you know where the limit is and how you can collaborate to create better role certainty, to create better workload balance, to ensure that the skill sets are there that are able to competently and confidently undertake the work without fear of being overwhelmed or fear with overworked or fear about mistakes as well. So that addresses the top three misconceptions. They're sort of all related, those top three. The final one is, and Barbara, I'm not sure about you, but the final one is definitely one that I'm aligned with, which is building psychological safety in your workplace is not about doing something once. This is really about instilling a culture within your organization. So when you're looking to build psychological safety, I strongly encourage you to be building out a plan that is regularly bringing this conversation to the forefront definitely for your leaders and your employees over at least a 12-month period to really try to ingrain it in the way that your organization is doing things. And I just use 12 months as a Kickstarter. Definitely after that, keep going as well. But you need to be really ensuring that this is a continuous conversation, and you've got to be really strong with your leaders that building a sense of psychological safety within your teams is about what they're doing every single day, not what they just do once. If you as an organization go out and declare that you are going to do this for inclusion and do this for ability to learn and do this for ability to challenge, and then don't back it up, that is when you'll actually have the opposite effect on your employees' engagement. They will seem disingenuous. It will disconnect your people because it will really show that or paint a picture to your people that you're really just doing this to try and drive something more out of them, drive more productivity, drive more outcomes, rather than actually supporting them to thrive in the workplace, to develop, and for them to experience the positives of work, not just the outcomes for the organization as well. So when you're feeling, no matter where you are on that beginning, growing, advancing, thriving in regards to your psychological safety, you really should have a clear plan about what your next 12 months look like and how you as a champion of psychological safety in your organization are going to bring that conversation forward, whether it be through training, reflective points at leadership, whether it's about doing pulse checks with your people or your leaders to really see where you're sitting and get a continuous engagement there as well. Brilliant. Do you want to take this one, Barbara?
Sorry, Oliver. I think this is really a point where we just want you to think in your, go back and connect to the leader you felt strongest to, and what were their best qualities. So just as we enter into this next phase of our discussion, I think it's, just to give you in your mind, who is the best who was the person you really learned and felt your best working with.
And incorporating that reflection of both, now that we've really spent a lot of time discussing psychological safety in the workplace, what elements or what components of psychological safety do you feel they brought to their work with you as well? Did they feel like, did you feel really included? Did you feel like they created a safe space for you to learn and develop? Did you feel like they encouraged you to contribute and they celebrated your contributions? Did you feel like that they enabled you to challenge and be curious about the way things were done and how they could be improved as well? So take a moment to reflect. You don't need to share. Of course, if you wish to share, you absolutely can. But just to take a moment to reflect, because reflecting and recognizing that in someone that you saw as a champion of leadership will be able to then help you incorporate that into your own practices as well. Brilliant.
So,
and I believe
now we move
back
to
over to you, Barbara.
that practical space about what you can do, and as you think through the concepts we've created already, elevating engagement and psychological safety as a priority, and to move it into almost at the executive level, if your organization is willing to commit to it. How do they elevate this in their agenda? How do they measure it? How do they make it a priority? And my passion is to move it in as a risk category, just as you would have tech risk, as you would have financial risk. Your people investment is as key to the organizational success. If you look at the potential revenue and the potential risk to the business, modeling behavior, and I think this really sort of is very much where Oliver was saying. It has to be embedded in your organization. Everyone looks to their leaders, everyone looks to their leadership and the tone they set. And if you are not modeling the behavior that you ask of others, then it's very hard to achieve it. And people will notice. They notice the tone. Leaders set the tone. So make sure you do not have a two-tiered system. Make sure that your procedures and your policies are accountable to everyone. Because again, your employees will sniff out that dichotomy. And it doesn't support the messaging of you're valuable and everyone is in this together. Dedicating resources, Oliver, absolutely, as you said, training is just not a one and done, a tick box, watch a couple of videos. It is assessing where your learning gaps are, learning towards expanding your knowledge, and then practicing and refining through coaching. Oliver and I are both clinicians. When you're building interpersonal skills, having the refinement with someone who has a business ear, as well as a coach who has some counseling background, brings forward the ability to unpack some of the emotional issues related to how you communicate and how you build empathy. This is not intuitive. It is hard work to refine and build your skills in this area. And then, as Oliver was already saying, it doesn't happen without discipline. Assess your programs, look at your investments already, review your existing data, your measures, and we can, certainly WPO can help you with that. But the data is there. Look at it. Set your priorities. Too many priorities can be overwhelming, so be specific on your top priorities. Measure and track them. Measure them at the highest level. And then continuous improvement, adjust your plan, move to the next. Remember, just because you mastered at one point in time doesn't mean that you should not continue to observe and measure. So those are very practical things an organization can do. If you move ahead, Oliver, to the next slide, when you've done it, you will see your organization change. You will see that, and maybe you have this already, but mistakes are embraced as learning opportunities. People can take risk. They can be, issues are addressed quickly. There is a process to say, hey, that didn't go well, or we need to change something. It has to be quicker the better. And when people are feeling safe, they are fearless and their ideas can come forward. Again, modeling behavior that is open to this allows for fearless ideas. And then, of course, learning, growth, and innovation. This is when when you're in your best stride, this is what you're seeing. Moving ahead, Oliver, to our next slide, I want to just, capture, you need to build on your foundation of trust. It is an investment. People, the importance of being able to put up your hand, say something, and then having openness to that, respect and feeling valued, comfort taking risk. The place that I want to underscore in this messaging is that if leaders can model being vulnerable and authentic, it makes it safe for others to do so. It's okay as a leader to say, hey, I've run out of ideas. I need your help. Or I'm feeling my energy is draining. This has been a very hard time. How do we restore it? If I'm feeling it, maybe you feel it. Being honest and open as a leader allows other people to be honest and open, and receiving it in an honest and open way, listening to it. And the other one I want to underscore is allies. Not all departments, organizations, or people on your team have the same power and feel the same comfort to bring forward issues. Make sure you have your eye on who needs lifting up, who has potential to move farther, whose voice is not being heard, and does the organization understand all the uniqueness within their organizational structure? Again, allowing for that to rise up as a priority ensures that people can take risk and feel engaged. Again, moving along, Oliver, I'll pass this back to you.
As we're starting to come towards the concluding parts of our presentation and discussion today, we're wanting to really start to really hone in and build on Barbara's messaging there and some practical tips. So the first thing, as we've given you some of those ideas now, is to reflect on what could make your work environment more psychologically safe. So thinking firstly, what are the 4 levels? We already did a poll, but now having a further reflection, what are the 4 categories or components of psychological safety do you think could really do with some further development within your environment? And then what actions that Barbara was just going through, and I'll backtrack in a moment, that you feel could really help your organization to develop some key developments here in psychological safety? What do you think would really help to contribute to taking it to that next level, whether it's from taking it from emerging to established to advanced to thriving? What do you think would be kind of some of the key areas? Is it about educating and prioritizing with your leadership, holding accountable in the way that leadership reflects on psychological safety, like they might do other risks, financial performance? How are we ensuring that leaders are modeling that behavior? Are we going out to employees and getting a pulse check on their sense of psychological safety? Is it around training programs at some point at leadership, some point at employees? How are you creating systems that encourage and celebrate mistakes as learning opportunities and ways to improve what we do as well? I know that there are some organizations, and it takes a level of psychological safety to incorporate something like this, but what they do is actually have what they call a mistakes log or an issues log, and it celebrates mistakes in that if you make an issue, make an error in the team, you put your name on the board, on the list, you put what the situation was and what the outcome of that situation was. Was it major, minor, moderate, etc. as well? And at the end of each month, the teams come together and review the mistakes that were made during the month and what they learned as a team. Did it unfold a process or a procedural issue? Did it unfold uncover a skills development opportunity for the team? Or was it something that was uncontrollable and something that they just need to be prepared for as a factor in the future as well? And we've seen with some clients that, yes, I completely acknowledge it takes a level of psychological safety to get to that level. But then if you can implement a strategy like that, it actually just helps to really embed the fact that although we don't like making mistakes, they are part of being human and they are part of working in a team, and fostering that we don't try and shift blame on that we really make sure that we're actually steering into that and making and acknowledging each other and how we work through those things. And if you can get leaders to really contribute to owning, as Barbara said, that vulnerability, you're really starting to demonstrate some key strengths in your psychological safety as well. So some key takeaways that we'd like from you to take away from this presentation is when you're starting to go out and take that next level, that next step towards building psychological safety, is don't rely on a discussion between, say, yourself and leaders, yourself in a particular department, yourself as HR, yourself as whoever, or leaders only. You can often get a different concept of the psychological safety of an organization, leaders compared to frontline compared to HR compared to leaders as well. You really want to be making sure that you are drawing on experience and that you are consulting with all levels of your organization, your team, to get a thorough and deep understanding of what the psychological safety is within that team or within that that organization as a whole. You really need to be deriving and developing opportunities to get some really good quality data from everyone, whether or not you feel like that particular cohort is going to give you some good marks or poor marks. You need to be going and really understanding what their experiences are like out there on the organizations, in the organization, as well. So we're going to be providing you some key questions in a moment that can really help you with that as well. Identify some of the key indicators of psychological safety in your organization. We've provided some pretty high-level, general examples of psychological safety and what that might look like in environments. Your organization is unique and your industry is going to bring its own different sort of nuances as well. So people not feeling safe to contribute might look very different in one industry comparative to another. So I challenge you to take some time to think about what would individuals not being willing to learn or mistakes not being constructively responded to look like in your industry, and given how your organization takes its inputs and creates outputs. What might it look like in regards to inclusivity? That could be very different from an organization where everyone comes in and works on the factory floor every day to a completely remote organization where everyone is interacting via virtual means every day as well. Your inclusivity and how people interact could be very different. Same with contribution chain with challenging. Create an action plan that is going to have the biggest impact for the least amount of cost as well. You can get a lot of cheap wins within this. And like I said, if you're really at the beginning, if you're really at the beginning, start with inclusion, the safety for inclusion. That is really the foundation as well. You can get some key wins there to help build from and build for the momentum from there as well. Identify if there's a need for training and coaching as well. Some of your leaders and managers might naturally see the benefit in this and see and have the skill sets to adapt and learn how to boost the level of contribution they have from their team, boost the sense of safety in their team to challenge. Others are going to need a helping hand. And of course, make sure you measure and evaluate the impact. Practice your own sense of psychological safety in that maybe not every concept you bring in works. The only way you're going to be able to know and improve and figure out whether you're shifting the dial is by appropriately measuring and evaluating the impact. Without any further ado, I know I've alluded to this throughout the conversation today. These are 10 key questions that you're able to go ahead and put them into some sort of assessment technology that you as an organization might have. And if you can, in a confidential or non-identifying way, deliver this out to your staff to really get an understanding of how they're seeing the environment from their perspective as well. Now, this scale is not WPO proprietary information. It is readily available on the internet. However, of course, what we can do is help you really take a deep dive into what the data you retrieve actually means and how you might wish to respond to it. But if you can deliver these 10 questions out to your people and enable them to have a safe way of completing it, you will get some really good understanding about where people are feeling the safety of the environment and effectively the psychological safety of the organization. And Barbara knows we've just gone up to time, so we might need to be really kind of quick as we go through this last little section.
Yeah, I'll make it very quick. There's a lot on this slide about programs, and I think it just goes back to what Oliver's been saying. Assess what you've invested in, make sure it's driving the changes you're hoping for or inspiring your organization to be lifted up. When people are emotionally engaged, they want to contribute, make the business case for your organization to be the best it can be, and engagement and psychological safety are key to your organizational success. So a pleasure meeting with this group today, and I hope that we've inspired you to really dig into your data and take some actions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for tuning in. It has been an absolute pleasure. Hopefully you're taking away one or two things from today's session. We'll go back to the beginning. It's been a pleasure. One or two things. Hopefully the concept of psychological safety is not an overly bearing one for yourselves now. Hopefully you're walking away with one thing that you might action within your team, within your workplace as a consequence of attending today. If you have any questions, I know I'm available to hang around for another couple of minutes as well. But enjoy the rest of the day, and hopefully, you take something away from this and reach out if there's any way we can help.